Hey y'all, welcome back to some tall tales, poems, short stories, long stories.
Just stories.
You name. That's Luther, and I'm his daughter Jill.
And I'm also Dugan.
I'm glad you're back, and hope you enjoy tonight or today's episode. We're outside. You can see it's a cloudy day, and we're fighting the dark a little bit, so we're hoping to wrap this up before it does get dark. But today's Dad's going to tell you. A share poem he did in November of 1994, and we were still living in Salisbury, Maryland at that time. And the title of it is "This Time Too Shall Pass." And Dad, are you going to share the history first or the?
I am.
Okay, all right. So here he goes with the history first.
Okay. I want to. Something happened. It just kind of metamorphosed in our home in Salisbury, Maryland. It started by Gwen and I invited my wife invited some missionaries over one night, a couple young men to for chocolate chip cookies. Well, at the same time that was going on, Gwen and I worked with the youth in the ward too, and we were on the back porch, patio, whatever, screened in one evening. It's I guess, in the fall of the year.
Oh, little interesting tip. That house is for sale right now in Salisbury too.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
What they want for?
I don't know. I have to look it
Okay.
up again.
Okay. I can't afford to buy it anyway, but there's a lot of good memories there.
Mm-hmm.
But we were having cookies, and two young men, and I'm not going to use names here because this poem was written about a young lady and a young man, and uh, they've gone on with their lives and separately, and so I'm not going to. But two young men showed up that was in my quorum at church on their bicycles, and believe it or not, they were more than happy to help dispose of the chocolate chip cookies we had made. So the next weekend, um, I got to tell this too. There was one missionary. He was from Chile, and English definitely was not his first language. And the next Sunday, he comes to me and he said, Brother Seawelll, we come to your house tonight and eat chocolate chip cookie. And I said, you want to come and eat chip cookies? He said, yeah, yeah. I said, what time? He said, 7 o'clock, 5:30. I said, 7 o'clock or 5:30? Yeah, yeah. I said, okay. I said, well, let's go ask my wife. So I went and asked her. She said, sure, come on. Well, um, we had cookies, and those same two young men, 14 years old, they showed up on their bicycles, and they helped us eat the cookies again. Well, by the next week, they'd spread the word. Hey, if you go to the Seawell's house on Sunday night, there's chocolate chip cookies. So we never invited those young men, and we never invited anybody on Sunday nights. But the next Sunday night, there was, I don't know, I don't remember how many, probably three or four. I know there were some brothers, about three or four brothers showed up, um, and a couple other young men that that these two young men had told about. Matter of fact, I think one of these young men's uh, older brother, I know he showed up on occasions anyway. But anyway, some people showed up, and we had chocolate chip cookies, and and we talked, and we played a game. Some people call it greedy chicken, some people call it farkle. But we learned a game, and we played that. And the good thing about this game, 3 people could play it, or 17 people could play it. And so um, each Sunday night, it seemed to grow, and it wasn't long. The young women were coming over there. And another thing about this, people didn't knock when they came to our house. They just walked in the front door, and they were there for Sunday night. And it just kept growing and growing. And I counted. I remember one time counting. There were 32 people in our house and we had a good sized family room, and it run into the dining room, and the kitchen was one just pretty big open room. It was good for partying, and then the living room, you could run over into the living room too, and it did sometimes. But anyway, it just kept growing, and tradition happened. The chocolate chip cookies, they metamorphosed into love cookies. They weren't called chocolate chip cookies anymore. They were. You went to the Seawell's house to eat love cookies, and if you came for the first time and knocked on the door, you were a knocker. I don't ever remember. I don't. I mean, I never knew why that was bad, but everybody was mocked if they knocked on the door when they walked in. That everybody would mock them. And another thing that happened over time was that when the first person that said they had to leave, everybody just dropped to their knees. Whether they were on the couch playing the game, didn't matter. You dropped to the knees where you were. And the last one standing, they had to say the prayer. So we ended up having closing prayers every evening. But this went on. This went on for, as best we can figure, it went on, I think, uh, almost 8 years, that this Sunday night. And I got to tell a story on Jill here, or Olivia, whoever she is. We got lots of names in our family. And but one weekend we went to, the only way we could not have it at our house was leave home. And there had been times that Gwen would tell me, Dugan, I don't feel like anybody coming over tonight. And I said, where do you want to go? Because if we were home, they came and they didn't knock. So it just happened. But one weekend we went to South Carolina to see her parents. And on a Sunday evening, we get a call from this one, our oldest, and she was home and they were having a party. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was most of the younger ones anyway, but some of the older people, some college students and so forth, they had decided to come over and they had a party. And we had a couple bags of chicken parts frozen in the freezer, and she called to make sure it was okay if they ate them. I think she was already cooking them when she called to ask. But anyway, it happened even if we weren't in town. Um, and it really did. We didn't have any choice but to, be there, or at least have a party there or a gathering if we were home. And there was a young man and a young lady that started dating each other, and pretty much every Sunday night they came and they came together. And after a year or so dating, I don't know how long it was, but it was a while of dating, they broke up. Well, this was pretty uh, dramatic for the young lady. And her mother and Gwen were real good friends. And she came over, and several times she would come with her mom, and she'd ask me to write a poem about what had happened, about her breakup. And she was really struggling. Her mom talked to Gwen about it. She was really struggling with the breakup. So I eventually sat down and wrote this poem. I hope it, well, I know that it meant something to her because years later, after she was married, she got in touch with me and asked me if I would send her another copy of that poem. So it meant a little bit to her anyway. And I know it's meant other people have enjoyed it too. So I'm going to share it with you. This time too shall pass. We've passed through times of childhood and adolescence too. We've survived young puppy love and somehow saw it through. Winters with their bitter cold have also come and gone, followed by the birth of spring and lovebirds with their song. Summer's days have never lasted as long as some would wish, and the multicolored autumns passes with a swish. Success nor failure never lasts, so temper both with grace. But like the seasons of our youth, all things do leave a trace. Tears of joy and smiles of glee were never meant to last. Neither were the bitter tears we carry from our past. No matter what the burden is, remember that, alas, keep the faith, don't shun the fight, and this time too shall pass. Um, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it has given people a smile or a feeling of closure or whatever they're looking for. And I enjoy writing, not I enjoy writing for me, and I guess I'm a selfish person, but I'm glad to share this, and hopefully it does bring some pleasure to others. And I thank you very much.
So while Dad was telling that, I remember when that breakup happened. I think I was in college, so I was going sometimes back home, sometimes on break. But um, Sunday nights at the Seawells, I remember Larry was a good friend of Holly, my youngest sister, and they came to visit us in Georgia. What year was that?
Oh, years later, Larry and Holly both were married, not to each other, but they were both married, and both of them had 15-year-old sons at the time. So it was years and years later, and they were neither one of them was. Well, they were driving toward the end, so they were about 16 or 17 when this ended, and they were pushing 40, so it's had to have been close to 20
Yeah.
years later.
So they came. Larry and his family came to visit. We were living in Georgia at the time, and I was visiting my mom and dad. And it was one summer, and Mom was sitting, and Larry came in first, and his family came in behind, and he knocked. He knocked, and then he came on in. And when he got to where he could see Mom, Mom was just grinning real big, and she started laughing. She said, "Ah, Larry's a knocker." And he was like, "Oh, I knew I should have knocked." But he said he actually thought about that as he was walking to the door, approaching the door. Should I knock or should I not knock? And he said he knew either way. He said, if I don't knock, they could fuss at me. He said, I don't want to walk in and, somebody not be, ready for us or presentable, walk around the house. He said, but then if I did knock, I knew I was going to be made fun of for knocking. And sure enough, Mama did. Mama made him feel welcome by letting him know he was a knocker. So that was pretty funny.
Have we got time to tell one more Larry story?
Sure.
Larry told me
Excuse me.
after Gwen's death. Larry told me, he said, he said Gwen had the prettiest eyes, and he said her eyes said so much. And he said there's two occasions I'll remember those eyes. He said one time, he said I was just hanging out at your house. He and Holly, both our families, Holly's family and Larry's parents, wondered if they were ever sweethearts. They'd been together since they were 3 years old. They'd known each other since they were 3 years old. And they were just close, really close. And Larry used to hang out at the house all the time. And he said, I don't remember. He said, nobody else was there. He said, but I was there. And he said, I don't know what was going on. I don't know if there was an occasion, if we were getting ready for something, or if I just happened to show up there. He said, but I remember, I don't even know what I was doing. He said, but Gwen says, Dugan? And he said, I looked up, and he said, she was looking at you, and said, you were looking at her, and said, you just dropped your head. And he said, and I did too. He said, because he said it looked like fire coming out of her eyes. He said, I don't know what you'd done, but she definitely did not approve of it. And he said, nothing was said. And he said, I was afraid to look up. He said, I didn't know what was happening or what was going to happen. And he said, it finally just, went away. He said, but I knew that Dugan had really messed up. He said, and then the morning that that I knocked on the door. He said, I really was hesitating whether I should knock or not knock. And he said, but then when I knocked on the door and then walked in, he said she was standing there waiting on me, and we'd seen them pull up in the driveway. We couldn't wait for them to come in because Larry was like, well, we loved Larry, and we had never met his wife or three of his four kids. We'd never met, and we couldn't wait to see them. And when he walked in, he said, when I walked in and saw Gwen, said she called me a knocker. He said, those beautiful eyes of hers were just smiling at me. He said, I never felt more loved in my life. So, also, Larry and I, we're attached because one Martin Luther King's Day, he and two of his brothers and
No, you can't tell that story
oh, we
yet.
can't tell that. I'm
Can't
not
tell that
telling that
story yet.
story.
That's a different day.
That's to be
But
continued.
thank y'all
So,
for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed This Time Too Shall Pass and a little history about how it came about and Sunday nights at the Seawells with the love cookies. All right. Remember to like, subscribe, share it with others. See you next time.
see ya, and y'all be pretty.